Welcome in, y'all, with the NFL draft just a couple weeks away now. And with Fernando Mendoza almost certainly going number one overall, I want to take a look back at every number one overall pick since 2010 and kind of grade them based on how they did in their career. And, there really wasn't any glaring like busts, right? But there were definitely a lot better than others. Let's go through them and we'll start here at 2010. And this, it's a tough one right off the bat because how do you grade this? Because as a player, he was a good player. He was solid for several years, but he had major injury problems, which really held him back in his career. But I think that's a factor. That's a factor because you take a guy, you need him to stay healthy, and even when he was healthy, he wasn't like elite. He was just a solid, proven starter. So as far as number one overall picks go, he was below average. Um, you know, I think that's fair. Cam Newton coming up next. I'm not gonna go as far to say elite. I'm gonna say great. He he had a little run there, and the MVP season was amazing, and he was on top of the NFL for a short while, but it was a relatively short while. He did have a fall off. It wasn't that long, but when he was good, he was really good. He was fun to watch. That I believe 2015 MVP season. That was a lot of fun. Andrew Luck, I mean, that man was elite. I mean, there's no debate about it. It's a shame. It's a shame that he's out of the league right now. He was such a good player. He was probably Hall of Fame bound if he stuck around his whole career. He was a special talent. A great number one overall pick. Fisher, we're gonna go below average there. Again, not like a bust, right? But picking it as far as a number one overall pick goes, yeah, that wasn't very good. There was a lot of better players in that draft. In hindsight, he's fine. Good player. Has played for a while, but as far as number one picks go, there's just far better, right? Not the best number one pick. Um, Clowney, I'm gonna go same. Again, this is not saying they're a below average player. I'm saying they're below. It was a below average number one overall pick, right? Um, Good player. Was really good for a short while there. I feel like it didn't last that long. But he was solid, right? Not someone you're kicking yourself because he should have gone in the fifth round or something. But there were definitely some better players you could have gone with at that number one there. Jameis Winston. Um, man, that's a weird one. I'm gonna go. Boy, I'm torn. I might go good. You know, that's a tricky one, right? And I think that sums up Jameis Winston. You don't know what you're gonna get with this man. I mean, you don't even know it changes on the day where I'd put him on this, but I'll put him in the good right now. I think you could honestly argue below average. We'll see if I change that as we move along here. Jared Goff, it's between good and great, and I'm gonna give him great. I think it was a great pick, because first overall picks are really tough, and this is a man. He's been to the Super Bowl, has he very good winning record in his career. Has put up numbers with the Rams, put up numbers with the Lions. Led both teams to the playoffs numerous times. Um, you know, uh, e- some number one overall picks, you're just hoping they get you to the playoffs once. So I feel like overall a great pick, and yeah, he's still chugging along. Baker Mayfield, um, he he's gonna go in good for me, and you know what? That officially brings Jameis down because they're in different categories in my mind. Jameis is a lot of fun, love the guy, but I would say I guess below average. Baker was a good first overall pick, right? He even today he's a good quarterback. You wouldn't call him elite, not top tier, but he's good. Seems to have a good leader, a good presence about him. Took the Browns to the playoffs, a place that they hadn't been in a while, and he can be a franchise guy. I think that's where the good belongs. Guy you're like, yeah, this could be a franchise guy. He's going to be a good, solid starter for a long time. But he's not doing anything spectacular. He's not, always in the playoffs. And some of the times he's made it here with the Bucks has been with, the easy division. So, a good pick. Um, Miles Garrett, elite, right? We saw him break the sack record this year. That's an elite player right there. Good pick, in my opinion. You did not go wrong there. Kyler Murray, very, very similar to Baker Mayfield. Good, solid starter. I think Kyler Murray flashed maybe a bit more at times. Kyler Murray's in the MVP convo, I feel like a couple different times through like week 8 or something, and then the team just fell apart. We'll see how he does in Minnesota. I'm kind of excited to see what goes on there. I think it could be a fun year. But as of right now, it's just going to be good, right? I don't think he's earned anything to be up in the great, but I think he's definitely done better than some of those other guys in the tier below. Trevor Lawrence is a tough one. Um, and see, I'm gonna get ahead of myself here. I'm gonna say great because I think he's still rising. I think this year, Cohen, it took a lot of the year, but I think he unlocked something in him, and I think he could have a good year coming up. It might be a bit much to be putting in at great, but he's still very young. He's done some good things. He had a really good season coming off of here. I think he's still rising, and I think he's better than Baker and Murray for sure. So I think he's in great, and I think he has still a lot of potential. I think the first couple years he definitely did not live up to that potential, but I feel like he can get there. Joe Burrow is elite in my opinion. Injuries, we'll see. We'll see what we think about this in 5 to 10 years. If he continues to be a guy who gets hurt every year and misses a bunch of games while eating up a bunch of your salary cap and you can't move on to a different quarterback, then yeah, he's going to drop down this list. But for now, it's still early into his career. A lot of injury problems, yes, but still a lot of time to make up for it. He's an elite player, no doubt about it. Walker is good. Is good. It's a good pick. I think there's a couple you could have gone over him in that one, but no like egregious ones that you're really kicking yourself for not getting right. There's some really good players there, but they're not like miles better than him. I don't think he would have dropped that far in a redraft. Good player, good run stopper. I think he's good. Not necessarily great. It's hard to compare when you're looking here, mostly quarterbacks. But it was a good pick. I think part of it is just like there wasn't that guy in that draft, even in hindsight. Or at least, in that early portion there. Bryce Young right now, it's just going to be good. And, I'm worried about a fall to below average, but it's a bit early for him. Um, but, it, I feel like he has a limited ceiling. We'll see. Led the Panthers to the playoffs this year with a losing record, but to the playoffs nonetheless. We'll see if he can do it again. Caleb Williams, you know, I'm going to go great. But I think next year, if I'm doing this, there's a chance he is an elite because, it's hard to earn that elite category this early. He looked really good. But I'm not gonna jump the gun too quickly. I think a lot of people would have called CJ Stroud elite after his first season. And while he's still a good quarterback, I think it's certainly a different outlook. Now I know this wasn't Williams' first season. I understand it's his second, but um, we'll see. I think he'll end up in the elite. In my opinion, he's shown such good flashes, and he showed a lot of growth under Ben Johnson. But for now, he's going to settle into that great for at least another year. And then Cam Ward it's TBD for me. I know he has a year under his belt, but it's so tough when the team is so bad around you to really get a good read on that. And I've seen plenty of his tapes, watched a lot of his highlights. Seen some of the Titans games when they're on. But I'll be honest, I haven't seen a ton of him either. Right, the Titans are not a team a lot of people are paying that close of attention to. So I think the verdict is still out on him. I think he'll fall kind of in that good category, in my opinion. He'll be a solid, reliable guy, but I don't think he's gonna set the world on fire, be great, elite, but I think he'll be, a fine pick in hindsight. We'll see, and we'll see where Fernando Mendoza is gonna land. It'll take a couple years to see what he's got, but he's gonna be the guy in Vegas, and it's a lot of weight on the shoulders to always be that number one pick, and we'll see how he handles it. NFL draft coming up in just a couple weeks.